Alright guys, what's good? It's SonicSol here with another YouTube video. This time I wanted to talk about parry. Just a lot of people have commented on my videos. They think that like I'm undervaluing parry, but I actually think parry is really strong in this game, despite the damage scaling, and I kind of want to go over some places where you would want to use parry, specifically for perfect parrying. Let's just get right into it. Let's just talk about drive parry. First things first, parry uses half of one stock of drive gauge. It's frame 1, parry and perfect parry. On the first 2 frames, you have the ability to do perfect parry. After that 2-frame window, everything else is a normal parry. Normal parry doesn't alter frame data. So for example, Ryu's standing medium. Yeah, this is minus on block. So if I block this, and then I press jab after, right? Like, this is what's gonna happen. Every time I counter hit him, because this is minus on block. If I parry, it's the same thing. He's negative every time. It doesn't alter frame data. If the parry blocks something that is plus on block, what's gonna happen is you cannot act out of drive parry immediately. There's a window where there's recovery, which means you can get punish countered in between. So you can't do like parry into DP, right? But you can block immediately. And you can also act if the move is negative, because it doesn't alter frame data. So like I said, I can act because the standing medium punch was negative. But if I have Ryu now do solar plexus, see, I get punish countered. My button doesn't even come out because I'm still in recovery. See, I'm still in recovery. Like nothing comes out. I get punish countered. So what this means is if somebody does something that's plus on block and you do a normal parry, they get to act anyway because they're at advantage. It's as if you block the normal. That means that they get to punish you quite a bit for doing parry. So you have to do perfect parry. I'm going to show you what perfect parry looks like. See, if I perfect parry the solar plexus, I could get a big punish, right? You may be thinking, wow, that means he could do jab and perfect parry it and then get roundhouse, right? So look at this. That's not a punish. That's because the jab and the solar plexus have different recovery frames. When I perfect parry a jab, I have as much as about like 9 frames of advantage to be able to press something. But if I parry solar plexus, it has double-digit recovery frames. There's a big difference between the two. That means I'm probably going to have to do like a stand medium punch, maybe a back heavy punch. But I'm not going to be able to do a roundhouse, which would be like a really good punish. If I see him do a heavy normal or anything like a drive impact, I get a big punish. That's a huge difference in knowing what you perfect parried. You can't just be like, oh, I get the same punish all the time, because you just don't. You basically get a punish. You're guaranteed a punish. And that also means that if it's a punish counter, you're going to take away their drive bar. Right? Like, I could take away some drive gauge. So, I don't even have to use my own drive gauge. I could just take away some meter. But notice how much damage I did. I did, like, no damage to him. I would rather not spend all my resources trying to deal so much damage to him off perfect parry unless it would kill. In every other circumstance, I'm going to be taking as much drive gauge as I can. Because you already spend a bar to do drive impact. So what happens if I like punish you with like my own drive impact? Look at that. He lost like 3.5 bars of drive gauge because I did drive impact immediately as my choice punish after my perfect parry. So he's going to lose almost 4 bars of drive gauge. He might not think of doing drive impact again, because if he does it again, he's going to be in burnout. So even if you fuck up and you don't get the perfect parry in this situation, you can just parry normally. And you get all your drive gauge back. In some cases, you may wonder, like, why don't I just do drive impact back at drive impact? If you fuck up the drive impact and you just do drive parry, at least you get the drive gauge back. And then because it doesn't alter frame data, they're -3 here. See? Because he's pressing jab, right? I'm at advantage if he does drive impact and I block it. He's -3. So it's the same thing if I regular parry. Maybe you don't want to do drive impact. Maybe you want to do drive parry to get the drive gauge back. And if it's a perfect parry, you just drain his drive gauge because you know it's going to have massive scaling. Another move that you would want to be using perfect parry on is like fireballs. So like if I regular parry a projectile, I cannot opt immediately out of it. So I'm going to press like stand fierce. You see how long it took for that shit to come out? This is perfect parry. Immediately it comes out. So I get to act immediately when I parry a fireball perfectly. What this also means is I'll be able to drive rush immediately after I successfully parry a fireball. If I do a normal parry in a drive rush, and then this is how it looks like if I do a perfect parry into a drive rush. Immediately it comes out. Very big difference. So what does this mean? It means I can punish projectiles if I'm good enough. So look at the damage on that. Very minuscule. But the same damage. You see how it does like far less damage? Perfect parry does far less damage for punishing a fireball than if I just comboed normally. If people throw misspaced fireballs or like fireballs around this range, I get a punish if I successfully read that you did a fireball here. Because you're not going to be able to react at this range to a fireball with anything. It's just going to be difficult. So if I have the read that you did a fireball here, I could punish you. Some characters like Luke as well have really bad projectiles because they have a ton of recovery. So you can punish them from further away. So that's the whole idea of like perfect parrying fireballs in this game. And the other reason why is because if you block a projectile in this game, you lose out like on drive gauge. So it's best to like perfect parry them because it doesn't spend any drive gauge. Whereas if you did a normal parry, you're going negative for doing a normal parry. So you have to perfect parry a fireball. And it's going to be hard to do that because the opponent's going to be throwing 3 different speeds of fireballs. It's just going to be hard to perfect parry all 3 of them. The best bet is to just do a regular parry to try to like stay somewhat positive. Because if you do a regular parry, if you walk forward, you'll get the drive gauge back, right? Because the game operates a little bit like Guilty Gear. Anytime you walk forward, you're going to build more drive gauge than you would have if you just stand still. And the same way if you jump back, it's built slowly. Or even if you neutral jump or walk back. In this case, if you parry a fireball, it's okay because you'll build it back by walking forward. It's the same concept in footsies. If you block a projectile and then walk forward, you're eventually going to get the space back. Like, look. See? You can do the same thing if you parry. It's just going to be slower because the parry is going to have some recovery frames. So that's where you would use perfect parry, so that way you can recover immediately. If someone jumps in on you, you can perfect parry that. You see how like it's a punish counter? If I perfect parry a jump in, depending on how deep the jump in is depending on what kind of punish I can do. But you can parry jump ins. You don't have to just block them. But of course, if the opponent knows you're going to do a parry on their jump in, they don't have to jump in with anything and then they just throw you. See? They just do an empty jump grab. In that case, you can do parry in the drive rush. See? And you go underneath them. The point is, that kind of mind game is going to be there. If you think they're going to jump in with a normal, you just anti-air them. And I would say, in general, you should choose to anti-air jumps over perfect parrying them. Because you don't want to get put in a mix-up. Right? You would rather do like an anti-air to guarantee the damage and the Oki. Obviously, there's going to be very character-specific things. So like if characters throw themselves at you with like long-range normals or specials, you can use parry if you know it's coming or if you can react to it. Like very telegraphed attacks. Like if Ryu does donkey kick, you know? So that's where I would recommend it. Or even in block strings where people do cancels. See that? You can perfect parry in between certain block strings with special cancels that have gaps. Any special cancel that has a gap, you can perfect parry in between that if you know it's coming. And like I said before, you can also perfect parry any telegraphed move. So like heavy donkey kick. So you can also perfect parry that as well because this is very clearly like telegraphed. You could also just do drive impact. But the difference is that you see how much health I have. So if I try to drive impact this, I die. So in a case where you can't use drive impact, you might want to do drive parry. And that goes for also doing counter DI. If you don't have enough life left, you might have to drive parry because you don't take any damage for doing it. And that alone will let you survive. That's another place where perfect parry is very much applicable. Everything else in this game, you're going to have to parry as a read. Because you're not going to be able to really punish jabs with perfect parry on reaction. Because you're only going to have like about 7 frames to really stop the jab with a perfect parry. And that's not humanly possible to be. Like, you're unable to react to it like that. Okay, so you know how like I mentioned in my previous video and the light normal video, and how Daigo mentioned how any button into drive rush, mostly off of lights, lead into like death if you have meter. Something like this, like he talked about before. There's a lot of scaling on this because you started off of a light normal and then there's drive rush scaling. But that's how much damage you do off of drive rush into level 3, right? Well, you get the same amount of damage if you do like drive parry. So like, if you perfect parry someone, it's roughly similar damage to if you did a drive rush from a light. You can guarantee kills this way by perfect parrying, which is just as dangerous. Like, the scaling is legit irrelevant if you can get the kill. It doesn't matter if it's drive rush from a light. It doesn't matter if it's that or if it's drive parry. The scaling's irrelevant when it comes to actually killing the opponent. Usually if you want to confirm the kill, you don't think about meter reserving or anything. The damage is guaranteed, so you do it. And even if they don't die, they're in the corner, they're boxed in, everything. When it comes to perfect parry, it's going to be a situation where you can guarantee the game. Those are all the places where perfect parry will be applicable. Now, the thing about this parry compared to Third Strike's parry is the fact that this parry right here has recovery. It's like Ryu's V-Skill 1 in Street Fighter V. It has recovery. Frame 3 onward, it's not a perfect parry, so you don't get a punish. It has recovery frames that it can get counter hit on, and it isn't perfect unless you time it properly. Parry in Street Fighter 3 had an innate risk by holding forward or down in order to nullify an attack, and then you got to punish immediately. That's the other thing about Street Fighter 3's parry, along with the fact that you could air parry. You cannot air parry in this game. And so as a result, if you jump in and try to parry, you're not going to get a parry, you're just going to get stuffed out by an anti-air. Street Fighter 6, if you go and do throw against a drive parry, it's a lot of damage and you lose a lot of meter. So it's not like you can just throw this out and think it's okay. At least in Third Strike, you didn't lose meter and you didn't take big damage for somebody throwing your regular parry, right? You didn't get punished for that. Instead, your opponent would have to delay their buttons to stop your parry. And even then, people could OS the parry in all the normals that they do. It's still good. Like, drive parry is still good, but to compare it to Third Strike is very, like, facetious. You're exaggerating, you know? That's all I really wanted to talk about with drive parry and its applications and where you could use it. I do think drive parry is strong. Now, the reason why I don't include it in a lot of the other videos that I talk about is because I feel like it's a moot point to go over how strong parry is. With drive parry, you have to consider a lot of other factors, like what your opponent is doing to you and what you're trying to punish with the drive parry, along with if your opponent plays like the mind game with you. And I don't mind the mind game in Street Fighter 6. I think the mind game is very, very fun for this game. I think it's a very fun game. And the way that they designed everything is really nice. The only problem that I think a lot of players have is the lack of hit confirms with medium and heavy normals that make it hard to really like stop stuff like drive rush and drive impact. But that's where the drive parry comes in. That's where your lights come in. Again, with the game coming out very soon, people are going to be using lights a lot to handle a lot of different things. It's going to be like light normals and parry that people are going to be doing a lot within the neutral in order to stop a lot of the more random factor things like, again, drive rush and drive impact. Those are my overall thoughts about Perfect Parry. I think it's going to be good for the game. Obviously, it's going to be strong especially as the defender. So, yeah. Let me know what you guys think about Perfect Parry down below and regular parry. Do you think it's good for the game? Do you think it's not good for the game? Let me know. And subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you get more videos like this so you could find out more about Street Fighter 6. I'll see you guys in the next one. Be easy.